So the question today is, how important is research in your fiction and nonfiction writing projects? Diana, welcome to Reality Coaching for Writers, where we
offer nothing, no fluff, just the real stuff to help you succeed.
That's right. So I'll let you jump right in and talk about the importance of research on fiction and nonfiction, because I know you spend a ton of time, well, not a ton, but you spend a lot of your time with nonfiction clients. But the question came up, how important is research on fiction? You know, for what I write in pirate novels, I kind of make this stuff up, so it's not that big a deal for me in some cases. But I'll get up and run.
Yeah, pirate fiction would lend itself to lore and myth, right? Anyway, so you just add to the myth and add to the mix that way. Well, it's interesting because on a recent forum that I kind of lurk on, a writer's forum that I enjoy and respect the people that contribute to it, they recently were talking about research. And so I think it's good to offer some sites for people that are writing both nonfiction and fiction. And so when I'm working with pastors, you know, they'll often in their Christian living titles offer statistics on, you know, how many millennials are leaving the church, or how many churches have closed their doors in the past year. You know, they tend to list statistics throughout their nonfiction books. And so one of the best research sites is Barna.org, and that's BARN, like barn, .org. And it's a great go-to source to get data and statistics, the most recent, you know, statistics and data, because it's quickly changing, you know. And there has been a lot of misquoting as far as the number of divorces in America. You know, I mistakenly re-quoted someone's information about there being no difference now between the secular world's number of divorces and the Christian church's number of divorces. And I found out that that's not quite true, that Christians still are doing better at their marriages, which is very encouraging. It was a little disheartening to get that other information, but it's still alarming that our number has grown, the divorce number, and I'm among that group of people having gone through a divorce. But it's important if you're writing nonfiction to really get your facts right. Say you're writing fiction, I mean a nonfiction book about a biographical character, then you're going to also want to look at some of these other places that we're going to mention that the fiction writers go to. But so for instance, if you're writing about a biblical character, a certain Christian living advice you have, but you want to use one of the disciples as an example, you really need to research and make sure that the way you're framing it is the way it actually was. I know we've been enjoying watching The Chosen. And Eddie, do you and Benny watch The Chosen?
She started it. I tried to get her to start it a couple times, and she never could get into it. I am now working on my fourth watch through the first 3 seasons again. I do it. I come back from Moore Square on Monday nights. That's my time when I eat, and I watch one episode of The Chosen. And it's funny that you said that, because today's Tuesday, so that meant last night I watched an episode, and I'm back in season 1 now. And it was the episode had to deal with the healing. Jesus healed the paralytic guy in the home, right? And that was the big focus. But in that episode, Jesus meets Mary Salome, Salome, I forget
Uh-huh.
how her name is. But anyway, she's John and James and John's mother, the wife of Zebedee, right? And Jesus meets her in this episode, and I'm watching this thing, and like I said, it's the fourth time I've watched it. It's the first time I realized that the way Dallas Jenkins portrayed it is, it's as if Jesus doesn't know this woman. It's as if the first time they ever met. But that's his aunt. That's his mother's sister.
Right.
So, Jesus knew the mother of James and John, and that's why on the cross, Jesus said to John, son, this is your mother. Mother, this is your son. He's passing, John, his mother off to John, right? Because they're related, first cousins, right? Anyway, it's just one of those kind of like your thing. We're talking about research, and I'm going, how did they not get that? How did they insert that as if Jesus never went to a family reunion and saw his aunt in 30 years, right? Anyway.
Well, and that's interesting that you say that, because I recently read something where they said they aren't sure if they had met before because of the geographical distance between relatives at some periods of time. So, but it just shows you that we can tell good story. And I know that those that are directing and writing the Chosen series are doing their best to, portray it as real as it was in the times. But it was interesting because I was reading a blog by this other guy called Dan Colbolt. Now it's Koboldt, and he wrote a book called Putting the Science in Science Fiction. And he is a science fiction writer, but he does a lot of, he talks about doing the research and how important it is to get your science right as much as possible. But at the end, and he uses scientific reviews, textbooks, reference books. He also gets some great general information off of science media like PBS, the Scientific American, and National Geographic when they do documentaries. So he gets a lot of his material like that. But at the end of his article, now again, he's a fiction writer, he's telling a story. He said, if it comes between accuracy and story, he says, I pick story every time. And I think that in The Chosen, they have done as much research as they can, but where it's a little gray, they choose story.
Yeah, that's great, because that's one of the questions that came up last night. It really didn't have anything to do with the passage. We're in John chapter 14, and it really didn't have anything to do with the passage. It was just a question. We were talking about hell, and what hell is like and all that. And somebody made a comment about going to Abraham's bosom, and apparently we're going to go there. And I was like, well, I said that Jesus was telling a parable. I said he was telling a parable about, trying to make a point about, even if somebody rose from the dead and came back and testified to people, they still wouldn't believe, right? He was, and I said, you have to be careful not to make doctrine out of a parable. I said, right. I don't think Jesus told infactual information in the parable. I don't think he would have done that, but you've got to be really careful in parables not to go and make a doctrine of something that, as if that's the way it really literally is. To your point, Jesus was telling a story, right? And he just wanted to get his message across, right? And so he may have not given you all the information, all the science behind it, because it would have been a very boring story if he had to explain what the chasm's like and why the people can't cross over, that kind of thing. So yeah, story trumps it. In the end, it always trumps it. And I would say it especially trumps it for women readers. And I think we've said this before. My understanding is that women are much less concerned about the scientific facts of things, the logistics and the logic. Guys, we're into it. We want to know how the bullet's made. Women want to know what the relationship is. How does that play into the story? So that's really important. You can know the science, but get the relationships right.
Well, and that's like every time on a date, a guy would say to me, "Do you want to go see this movie?" And I would say, "Is there one female in it? Give me one female and I'll go." Because yeah, the action, I understand how it advances the plot. But if there's not relational stuff going on, it's all just action and bullets flying. And at the end, guys just high-fiving each other, we won, then it doesn't hold the same interest to me. So yeah, I definitely want story attached. I understand that action and, especially, if it's something like a story on Gettysburg or, uh, who's the great Scotsman, I can see him in his kilt. Anyways, Braveheart, Braveheart.
If we were to go back and look, if we were to go back and watch sports back in the 1960s, the Olympic Games, the football game, basketball game, you would never see the behind the scenes interviews and comments about the players, right? They never did the features about the backstories of the players and all that. But CBS and ABC and NBC figured out, if you want the female viewer, you better give the backstory in the relationship, how that person relates to the thing that's happening on the field. The guys just want to know who won. But to your point, the women want to know who the guy is, right?
Yep.
And how did he get here?
Yep. Yeah, that's why Curtis's dad took me to Steeler camp, because when I met the players, then I was the one lining up in front of the TV because I met those guys. So I cared about them winning or losing because I met them. So yeah, so true. So true. So so some of the cultural, there are a lot of people that write biblical novels like Francine Rivers. And so a lot of their research, and this goes for the nonfiction, say you're writing a Bible study and you can give the Greek and the Hebrew, but it's really important to bring culture in to really add nuances and depth and flavor to a Bible study. I think that's why Beth Moore's Bible studies became so popular, was because she brought so much of the cultural understanding in to her covering a biblical character or a biblical topic. And it was so thoroughly researched that it just added such flavor, and we could visualize these women, these men living in these situations and better understand God's interaction with them and Christ's interaction with them. And it adds so much. So some of those, of course, you start with the Bible. And the Bible is one of the best commentaries on itself. Use the Bible against itself. That's always one of the best commentaries. But there are so many great sources available. One is the Archaeological Study Bible. Then there's the Cultural Backgrounds Study Bible. There's Nelson's Bible Manners and Customs. And with that book, you get a lot about geography, food, clothing, government, history, and then the culture. And I thought it was interesting that there's a place called BiblePlaces.com. And so you can even look up locations and towns and hear more of what kind of buildings they built, and what they lived in. And then also there's one called Associates for Biblical Research. So these are just a few of them that, you can turn to add flavor and depth of story in nonfiction and fiction.
That's it's great information to know that. When you're telling me this, I'm thinking of Jesus's warning in Matthew 24. Basically, when you see the troops outside of Jerusalem, leave, get out of the city, head to the mountains. Right. Well, I've never been to Israel. I wanted to go, and I haven't been this year, right? So I don't know what the topography looks like other than looking
Mhm.
at it on a map, and that just gives you the flat dimension. You don't actually see the topography, right?
Right.
But I gotta believe that when he said that, the audience would have known which mountains he's almost referring to. Like they're looking
Yeah.
around going, that one over there, that one over there. That's a good
Mhm.
place to go to, right? And so their
Yeah.
mind, they're visually going, okay, when it happens, this I'm coming off group, grabbing my wife, we're going that way, and heading over there, going to the northeast and going up that mountain, right? Uh,
Right.
and I, and I don't know that without what you just said, without that resource, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah. And these the Illustrated Dictionary of Bible Life and Times, it offers actual images, and so does the Bible Places. But Paula Parker, she's multi-published author of biblical novels, and she's a part of this forum that I lurk in with several well-published authors. And she recently mentioned that there's a website called Behind the Name, and it's great for finding names for your characters.
Mm.
And so, that's an important thing, naming a character. I mean, even for your pirates, you probably have read a lot about pirates because you have an interest. And so you'd be familiar with some piratey names, you know. And but to add, you're not gonna, okay, you can use the word Roger, right? Because Jolly Roger, I guess that, but normally, like, I'm trying to think of a non-piratey name.
Well,
Jim.
I don't know that there would be a non. I don't know what a non-pirate. I know a lot of. They're all just about all British, right? I mean, unless it's French or Spanish. But I'm thinking Bartholomew. Bartholomew was going to be a pirate name.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because Bartholomew was a British name, and Drummond. Anybody that's named Drummond, if you're a Drummond, you're probably from the UK somewhere. You were in the British fleet, and so there would be a Drummond. People like that would be pirate names. You know, I can't think of. Well,
Well, how about a Tim, Timothy, or a Jim? Tim or Jim? I guess I wouldn't name a pirate Tim or Jim.
well, yeah, but I use them because I use them because I'm making jokes out of it. So
No, 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 no. Well, but you're also have a younger demographic, right?
right.
I didn't know you had Jim or Tim in there, but um, I'm sure there's Timothy's way back in the background. If there's Timothy's in biblical times, then there's probably a Timothy pirate. But I just thought it was interesting that there's a website for finding names for characters that you can actually research behind the name, and that's
Yeah.
the name of the site. But what are some of your names, and how did you come up with them?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember I can't, off the top. I was trying to remember the one that I did for the end of Calico Jack, and oh, I know now. I remember Hoblin Dobbin. Hoblin Dobbin. So
I like
he was the one that only had one leg, and the other leg had one good leg, and the other foot had gangrene. So he was Hoblin Dobbin, right? Because he walked with a limp and everything. And I named him after my cousin Ricky Dobbins. And so I wanted to make Ricky famous, so I named one of his characters Hoblin Dobbin. And Ricky wasn't impressed. He didn't seem to find the humor in that. But I thought it was a good name, Hoblin Dobbin. But
I
too
like it. Hobblin Dobbin.
too
Yeah, I
slim,
think that's good.
too slim Tim. That's another one that I use. Too slim Tim. So a famished pirate. He doesn't get any food, so he's too slim Tim. That's the kind of thing I do. Is I always take whatever the quality of the character and accentuate it. And that's what, like in this one, in Down to Davy Jones, the sidekick is T-E-W is his name. T-E-W. That's his last name, right? But they call him Too Few, because he's a drunk, and so
Oh,
and the pirates called him. He's had a too few many, so they just shortened it that he's Too Few. when you see him coming, he's too few. And again, I'm doing it for humor, but the guy that
Well,
writes, Patrick O'Brien, the guy that writes, maritime novels, he would never go for what I do. But you were going to say, go ahead.
well, so what is his style then? What would he would stick with?
Oh, too few?
No, you're the guy you just mentioned.
Oh, Patrick O'Brien, he would use something like your website to research all the names, and he'd get them. He wouldn't just grab a name; he would grab a name with a lineage and a pedigree to go with it, and all of that, and bring it out in the story all the way through the story. There would be a reason why the individual was named that, and you would trace it back, and then probably there would be a curse or something tied to that. And that's going to come into play in the story later on, and that's why they're not going to get the French, because they never got the French. His family's never gotten the French. They've been trying to get the French for 200 years, and they can't catch the French. All that would come out of the story. Patrick O'Brien was doing it.
Okay, so one other thing I do want to mention, and then that going back to this science fiction writer who wrote "Putting the Science in Science," he also has been published in Nature, Science, the New England Journal of Medicine, and other scientific journals. So I wanted to say that in the midst of you doing your research, think about that someone else might be interested in the information you uncovered, and you might be able to write an article and just take some little nugget and put it right and share it in a writing magazine, or if you're writing about golf and perfecting your golf swing, there's Golf Magazine. You might be able to write an article and back up to who was the first golfer that ever wore a shoe on his foot that was close to what people.
The cleats.
Yeah, there's interest in articles on your topic. So it's just another way of thinking about using what you study, because all of your research that you're going to go through is not going to be included in the novel that you're writing or the nonfiction book you're writing, but you need to do the research. But consider how you might use some of that knowledge that you've gained to write an article and sell to a magazine.
No, that's good. That's good. I'm trying to think of any of the research I've ever done for pirates, if it's ever been of any benefit to me in any other way, and I can't really think of anything other than up off Long Island Sound, and I forget now the name of the island. Anyway, it's off the coast of New York. That's where Steve Bonnet may one time maybe buried some treasure, but the odds are probably not, right? Because pirates didn't bury the treasure; they spent the treasure or drank the treasure, right? They're not investing it in the future in their retirement plan. That wasn't anything pirates ever did. But there is an island up there that and doing my research, there's like I said, I don't have the name off the top of my head, but it's close to New York, close to Manhattan, right? It's divided by a body of water. And the pirates would stay there because it wasn't on the mainland, and they could guard the island, right? So they watched for other ships and boats coming. So they hung out on the island, and then they would ferry over to the mainland, what's now Manhattan, to drink and swap and exchange and all that, and come back. So there would be some pirate artifacts on the island, but you're not going to find them now because you got $1 million homes. It was pretty good research. I mean, it's fun to do the research and learn about it.
Yeah, and that would be a fun article for some magazine. Yeah. Even Writer's Digest. They are always looking for articles about the writer's journey, and that might be an interesting article about and a fact I uncovered, while researching one of my pirate novels.
Yeah, and in North Carolina, the one that kind of comes closest to that is Teek's Hole out in Ocracoke, because even today that's still an issue. And really, what all Teek's Hole there's the island, there's Ocracoke Island, right? So that's sand,
Mhm.
it's above water, and on the backside, on the sound side, there are shoals, sandbars all over, because it's only 3 foot of water, right? Because you got
Right.
Pamlico's shallow, but there is a cut, there is a channel that comes in, twisting, turning, that allows a boat with about 10 foot of draft to drop an anchor, right? Blackbeard knew how to navigate that cut, right?
Oh,
So when they had the big fight on the Outer Banks right when Blackbeard was killed, his boat's on this deep water, and the British captain thought he could just sail right to it. And he ran aground on the sandbar that was dividing, because he didn't know about it. He didn't know there was a cut you had to go through to get there, right? So it's still there, kind of, because that's the
mhm.
topography of the Outer Banks and the Pamlico Sound, right? It's still there if you want to go look at it.
That's
Rapid.
cool. That's really cool. One other thing that this Dan Cobalt did mention is that you want to beware of using curated websites like Wikipedia. And he said, while they're great resources for casual reading and research, and they tend to be updated as new discoveries emerge, but because they're still written and maintained by people like you and I, we can update Wikipedia with new information. So because the general public, maintains it, he said you can't really,
Trust
it can,
it.
it can get you started, but you shouldn't,
Right.
depend on Wikipedia, as your main source,
Yeah.
or
No,
other ones like that.
I think I mentioned on one of our episodes before about Dave Parker and how I was doing research on him. I was trying to find one African American baseball player who grew up in the '60s in the Charleston area, who made it
Okay.
to the major leagues. And Dave Parker was from that area. Now, he actually grew up in New York. When his parents separated, he went to New York and lived with, I think this is right, lived with his mom in New York. I think that's right. He lived, I think it was his mom, not his dad. I mean, but he went to New York. He didn't stay in
Okay.
the Charleston area very long. But when he was 15 or 16, he might have still been in the Charleston area, right? So it was enough for me to qualify. My point is, I started at Wikipedia with that information. That's where I got the name Dave Parker. But then I had to start drilling
Okay.
down at other sites and bibliographies and books
Mhm.
to actually find out, yes, he did or did not grow up in the Charleston area in the '60s. And there's not a lot of information about him other than, going to his family and saying, is this true? You know, um, but you're right, Wikipedia got me started, but I didn't rely on it because
Right. Yeah. And I think it's a great place to even just, oh, and one other thing is Jane Friedman, who used to be the editor of Writer's Digest magazine. She mentioned being careful of using Chat GPT for statistics and data and research right now, because it's giving out a lot of misinformation, even though it's fun to work with. And you and I have been having fun with Chat GPT, that right now at its present stage, it's not reliable, information
no,
for research.
no,
Yeah.
it's gotten worse. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know. I don't, but it for sure it's gotten worse over the last 2 or 3 months, which is kind of odd. Normally tech things get better, but not chat. Not chat.
Well, and it could be if if yeah, who knows? Yeah. But just watch. I'm sure it will get better. I'm sure, as
I'm not sure it's going to.
no, you don't
I'm
think?
I'm thinking that from what I've read, I think that we're off on a rabbit trail, but I'm thinking their funding is drying up. They haven't figured out a way to monetize it and keep it up. And so they're beginning to cut corners on the back end, which is going to just make for a more inferior product. And eventually it'll get absorbed or lost or whatever. Microsoft will probably grab it, and for pennies and mix it into Microsoft Word or something like that. Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, I really do feel like
Interesting.
ChatGPT is going to be very much like Napster. It'll have been the groundbreaking AI
Right.
thing that everybody remembered, but it won't be in business in a year from
Whoa. Whoa. Well, it's been fun.
now. Yeah, right, for a while.
And just I'm a people watcher, And it's been fun watching people react, the outrage, the fear, the, conspiracy theories about Chat GPT. And then you and I kind of looking at, well, okay, it's here. So what can we do with it? And just kind of playing with it. And so I'm kind of sad that it might
It's gonna go
meet
away.
an untimely death, but we do know artificial intelligence is here to stay on levels. But yeah, so Eddie, so final parts as a fiction writer on research. You've also written some nonfiction, so
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, the research on the fiction side is really fun to get the story idea started and to get it concrete down. Again, I'm not one of these. I'm never going to be. I'm never going to write. I don't think this. I don't think I'll ever write a novel where I have to have the research that accurate because it's not in my nature to do that. I don't spend that much time in one place before I move. I'm much more of a fly by the seat of my pants and let's get going and let's get on the journey and have some fun. That's me, right? So I'm not going to research anything to death before I make a decision. I just want to know about, give me 3 good facts for the journey and I'll get started and figure it out along the way. And so that's for me the fun of research. And I will give you an example, and I'll just go ahead and throw this out there. We've got a little bit of time. My friend Kevin and I were going back and forth on emails about that comment that Jesus made about in Matthew 24 about, when you see the abomination of desolation, get out of there, get to the mountains. And Kevin was making the point, we used to think about going to the coast, and he was like, but Jesus didn't say go to the coast. He said go to the mountains, go to the mountains, right? And the coast was pretty close from Jerusalem. It's not far. He could have said go to the coast, right? But he didn't. He said go to. So we got talking about that. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but Kevin came back with this really good theory that there is a bunker hidden in North Carolina, in the North Carolina mountains, that's run by the NSA, CIA, the super silent, you don't even know they exist, intelligence agency the United States government has funded and has funded for the past 50, 70 years, right? There's this bunker in North Carolina. So he and I started brainstorming on it. And I said, well, that would make a good Caden Chronicle series. My character, Caden, had to go up into the mountains and into a cave and track down. I said, how would the story get started? And Kevin was like, Sasquatch, Bigfoot kills the park ranger. And I went, yes. I haven't done a mystery on Sasquatch and Bigfoot yet. Yes, that's where Bigfoot's up in the North Carolina mountains, and he's hiding out in this bunker. Now you got to go in and find all these super, clandestine stuff. So yes, the research led us to that. Is my point. That's where the research led us there.
Well, and the research for that novel, you need to go to the Bigfoot Museum outside of Atlanta that is very impressive. It is quite a combination of actual expeditions that were financed by very wealthy people through the years, and it's not as hokey as I expected it to be. It's the Bigfoot Museum between Franklin, North Carolina, and Atlanta. And it's really fun. And I left there scratching my head, even having my dad having been a volunteer inspector of all things for the state police of Pennsylvania related to Bigfoot sightings, So he was an investigator for the state police in Pennsylvania. And I found that museum quite extensive. They had extensive and a lot of verified research. So it was really, really cool. So for me, last minute thing, just people writing nonfiction, don't lean on old data, get fresh data, and go to barna.org and make sure that you are writing in the proper culture if you're talking about biblical times, but mainly just get your data right, get the latest statistics, and make sure, you're quoting the latest.
Yeah, I would say absolutely that, because the stats change almost daily. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's changing daily. We're in a fast moving. Well, this has
Yeah.
been great and fun. We'll have another exciting episode next week, and then I'm off to Italy, so you're going to have a couple of
Yes.
guests while I'm gone for October. So, Diana, we'll talk to you again next week.
Okay. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.